Hello and welcome to the SurrealDB stream number 16. We'll be looking at 1.1.0 with some big features. This is the first stream of 2024, so it's great to have you here today. Here you go. Look, new setup, new background, new visuals for 2024 going forward. So I'm going to be joined today by Rushmore and by Maxwell. They've been working on some of the big features and announcements in the 1.1.0 release, and we'll be talking a little bit about how we are going forward with our releases and with our versioning, and talking about some of those big changes that are coming in the version which is being released today. So first of all, if you're joining us from YouTube or from LinkedIn, do let us know in the chat where you're joining us from. And again, if you've got questions at all, whether it's about anything we're discussing in the stream or anything else at all in addition to that, then just let us know, and I'll try and answer your questions as I can. So I'm going to bring up Rushmore to begin with. Here we go, Rushmore. Great to have you on the stream. So a bit of background for anybody who's joining us. Rushmore is a Rust engineer. He's been working with Rust for close to 10 years now, and he's been instrumental in our Rust SDK, our connectivity layer between the Rust SDK and the server, and other aspects of the server. So Rushmore, I guess the first thing to do is talk about a little bit about 1.1.0 and what's in this release. And one of those big features is live queries now in the Rust SDK itself. So yeah, tell us a little about that feature.
Thank you, Toby. The live query allows you to connect and listen to changes to your database records in real time. This has always been available on SurrealDB, starting with version 1.0, but we did not have an API for that in the Rust SDK. Starting with 1.1.0, we now have an API in the Rust SDK. It integrates seamlessly with the API that we already have. So everything's going to work the way you are used to when you're using the Rust SDK. You just convert your normal select queries to live queries by just calling the live method.
So let's just bring that up, because it is super simple now, isn't it? So this is the Rust SDK here, and you could connect to a namespace, connect to a database, and issue simple queries. But now with the addition of just one word, and this word works on a table or a record or a range of records. It's pretty cool. So now you just have to add .live function call before your await call, and that turns the result set into a stream which you can then listen to as you go forward. So this code makes it look so simple, but obviously a lot is happening behind the scenes. But yeah, the great thing about this is, as I said before, it works on tables. So here is an example to listening to all changes on a table, or all changes that you have access to, let's put it that way, on a table. And then you may want to just listen to a specific range of records. So this one is listening to a range of records beginning with where the ID begins with Jane and the ID is not greater than John. And then taking that one step further, you can listen to a specific record. So I want to just listen to changes for the person record with this ID. Each one of those gives us a stream that we can then iterate over as we want in the Rust code. I guess, Rushmore, what does this mean for Rust developers, and what can they do with this?
Well, it just depends with their use cases, but the applications really are endless. Anytime you just want to have a real-time updates to what's happening with your data, you can then just listen to that data and respond appropriately. So Yeah, it
Awesome.
can actually do anything with that.
Exactly, and actually, there's no example here, but we'll do this in a subsequent blog post. But you can actually listen to the specific changes, so the diff changes of a record or of the records as those changes happen, can't you? So this notification that you get back will also include diffs if that's what you requested in your query. So you can send back full updates to the tables and the records. But vice versa, you can also just receive very small updates. If it's a massive document and yet only one word has changed, you can receive just that word and the position that was changed in it. So really powerful, and now right into the Rust SDK. So going forward, our plan is to then bring that functionality into our SDKs that are built on top of our Rust SDK. So that would be our Node driver, our Arduino driver in due course, Python, and then eventually a C library as well. So on that note as well, we'll be talking about the Python driver in a little bit later with Maxwell when he joins. But yeah, we'll be releasing that Rust driver or Rust-based Python driver very soon, so that you can get your hands on that as well. Rushmore. So I just want to chat a little bit about this seems like a single release where we've got some performance improvements and bug fixes, and we've got some new functionality. But as we go forward now, we need to obviously we've got a new plan in place for how we do releases and the guarantees that we give to users of our database and developers and engineers who use our SDKs. So I think that's probably the most important part of this stream today, is actually saying, what is that plan? And let's start with on the Rust side, looking at the Rust SDK, the nightly channel, and the beta channel. If you could explain just a little bit about the changes that we're doing there, and then we'll go on and talk about our releases as we go forward.
Yeah, so going forward, we're going to be following a release train model to manage our releases. On the Rust side, we're going to do that using 3 crates. We've got the usual 0DB crate. That's going to be our stable crate. All the stable releases will go into there. That includes the 1.1.0 version that we're releasing today. We also have the 0DB nightly crate, which tracks the development branch. So if you really want to live on the bleeding edge, you can use that crate and have releases updated almost every 24 hours. We only do not update when there are no changes on the development branch. We also have the beta crate, 0DB beta, which sits somewhere in the middle between nightly and stable. So the beta features and bug fixes changes that we're actually earmarking for release into the stable crate. So anything that's going to be every month. So every month we're going to branch out. Sorry, Toby.
Yeah, I was going to say. So let's jump back a little bit. We'll come and talk about those specific crates, the beta and the nightly ones, and how simple it is to use as well. But let's jump back. So going forward now, for everyone who's joining us today and who's watching this stream in the future, from this release onwards, we'll be releasing a new version on the second Tuesday of every month. So this will be following a release train. So we'll be releasing today 1.2.0 beta, and over the course of the next 30 days, or roughly 30 days, that will be maturing into 1.2.0, which will become stable on the second Tuesday of February. This gives users, whether they're using the database from a querying point of view, or whether they're using an SDK in Python or Rust, this gives users the ability to build on something which is guaranteed to have as much backwards compatibility as we can guarantee, because there are obviously some security changes that we have to get into the products every now and again. But we're effectively ensuring that users can upgrade simply, have new features, but not break things in their application as they move forward over the course of the new version. So starting today, and in fact it started a month ago on the second Tuesday of December, but starting today with the first release of 1.1.0 since the 1.0 launch in September, we'll be going forward with a monthly release cycle, and you can decide to stay on the bleeding edge with nightly, as Rushmore said. And if you're using Rust, you can just change SerilDB crate to SerilDB-nightly, and you'll get those changes on a daily basis right into your Rust programs. If you're not quite on the bleeding edge in terms of nightly, but you do want to test out and check out some of the new features that we're pushing in a monthly basis, then you can also change to the SerilDB-beta crate, and you can also download or upgrade your server version, database server version, to a beta version rather than a nightly version. So this gives you the ability to either stay on stable, to continuously upgrade without worrying about any breaks and changes in your application. And then if you want to upgrade and test out beta features, whether that's on a separate QA server or in continuous integration, or whether that is just part of what you want to do, you want to be developing on more of a kind of cutting edge product, then this is the release we're going to be going forward with now. So really exciting stuff. And Rushmore, yeah. So on the Rust side, if we could talk a little bit more about how we're going to be versioning our separate modules and separate crates as we go forward, so that we can guarantee this backwards compatibility in the Rust programming layer, whilst at the same time pushing new features out to our server and to users using the client over the WebSocket and an HTTP connection. If you just explain a little bit of that, that'd be great.
Okay. So we've got 3 layers in the Rust SDK currently. The SDK itself is also houses like the lower level, like the compute layer. But right now it's all a single crate. We're going to be breaking it out into separate smaller crates that we can version separately. But in the end, we're going to have a default crate that we're going to depend on from the Rust SDK. That's going to be backwards compatible. If you want to opt into the newer features, you'll be able to do that by selecting the appropriate cargo feature that you want to enable the specific features that you need.
Awesome. We've got a comment here from the seed ship. These sprints each month are going to be a great news. Absolutely. It's been we're constantly trying to push features and push the boundaries of what this database offers and what it enables you as a developer to do. But moving forward with a regular release schedule is a massive part of that, so that you as a developer, as a user, can know that when releases are coming, know when changes are going to be made available, know when fixes are going to be there. And I'm sure we'll talk about it in a future stream, but we've also improved our security analysis and security workflows internally, and we're pushing out advisories on any security or issues with regards to Stack Overflows or denial of service issues, with security issues in the product. We're pushing those out. You can see those on GitHub already for a few of the ones that we've analyzed and fixed. And again, big thank you to anybody in the community who has submitted bug requests, submitted issues to our security email address. That's really important in making this product as secure and as stable as we can make it. So thank you for that. And yeah, this is great news. This release cycle is going to be great as we go forward. So we'll be releasing a blog post shortly this week about the release train and about what that means for users, but nothing new to what we've discussed here. It's going to be regular. You're going to be able to rely on it, and it's going to mean you can get access to the best and the newest features without having to break your application, which is going to be great. I don't know if there's anything I missed there, Rushmore. Is there?
I think that about covers it all.
Awesome. If you've got any questions about anything we discussed there to do with the release train, release versions, or our kind of plans for the Rust side and the Rust development, then let us know in the chat, whether on YouTube or LinkedIn. Let us know. Alternatively, if you're on Discord, then ask questions on there as well. We'll be happy to answer those questions. So Rushmore, thank you. I'm going to bring up Maxwell now to talk a little bit about Rust and also the ML side of things, which is an incredible feature we're really proud to release in this version, and we'll be building on it in the next releases as well. But Maxwell, I mean, in one sentence, what excites you? Okay, I'll give you 3 sentences. 3 sentences. What excites you about the ML functionality that we're releasing today, which has been in beta this last month, but we're releasing today, and what excites you about our kind of steps as we look forward to the future?
So our ML functionality kind of enables safe, I'd say, computation, and also convenient computation, and also ergonomic computation, right? So those 3 points. And just to elaborate on that, in the past, I mean, I've had experience in machine learning, and what usually happens is you train a model, you then just like release that model, and kind of data around that model is kind of like lost in terms of the weights or anything like that, or if we use any sort of like normalization, and then you can come across these models, you don't really know what they do and stuff. So what we do is we have a SerML file, and we kind of package all the information needed to run the model, and then we've actually got some functions inside Serial DB that kind of just run these as well. And super exciting, sorry, this is the next one, is the combination of SQL language with machine learning, which I think is an absolute game changer in that sense.
I'm going to bring that up on the screen so we can walk through some of this functionality. So all of this is visible in our blog post, but this is where it gets really exciting. So right now, in this version, you can build your own models in Python using the tools you want or you use already, and you can bring those into SerilQL or SerilDB, the platform. And this is really, really powerful in what you can do, because you can then turn that model, which you usually would have to run in Docker or run on an API layer, running in Python, in an inference engine somewhere on the cloud. You can now bring that model as a function right into the database, and you can use that function in events, in select queries, in update queries, in wherever you want to, all the weird and wonderful places that you want to be able to use that inside your queries. And this example here only touches the surface, but effectively, this is bringing out the price prediction of a set of houses, and it's looking for prices or predicted prices of houses where that price is above a certain amount. And the model itself is expecting 2 arguments, square foot and number of floors. Now, that's obviously a very rudimentary basic model, but just for an example, this is really powerful. So whatever your model expects, you can pass that in as an argument, and you can get back the result without ever having to leave SerilQL or even the ecosystem around the database. You can do that right within the database. Now, this is, I think, the power, Maxwell, is that we're not forcing people to do something in a different way. They can do the machine learning and build the machine learning models and the functions, therefore, in the way that they have always trained those models already. That's correct, right?
Yeah. So it would be very ambitious of us to say that we're going to rewrite everything. So instead, we kind of focus on doing the key things really effectively. We're a database, so we focus on the storage and the running of those models, and the running of those models alongside the data. That's where we really excel in. But let's say you train something in PyTorch or sklearn, it will automatically convert into our file format and can be uploaded anyway. And we've even, our file format, we haven't tried to be too off the wall with that either, because we don't want to just like drag you down some like locked down ecosystem, and then if you want to change tack, you're going to regret it. Instead, we still use like Onyx protobuf, but we just have some headers on top of that. So that means that like the headers still tell our database what's going on. And as you saw with that SQL, it maps the variables with the column inputs, and then it automatically normalizes the data if you've actually got normalization data in there, like parameters. So it's like super safe and super easy. But if later on, for whatever reason, you want to use an established Onyx runtime for something like on the edge and you don't want to use SurrealDB anymore, you can then just like rip out the header and just use the Onyx runtime, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. I'll bring up an example. So really, we're not forcing any user to have to move into our own file format. The file format is really a package that enables you to bring that into the database. But underneath that package itself is PyTorch. It's the functions that you use. It's NumPy. It's scikit-learn, and anything that you use to build your models already. You can bring that in without having to change it. So as Maxwell said, you don't have to be forced to use us if you want to move to a different inference engine in the future, if that makes sense for your project or for your workflow. You can do that maybe even at the same time. You could package one for SurrealML and one for a different inference engine. But obviously, from our point of view, this makes sense to bring it into the database because that is where your data sits. And machine learning models are always operating on data. So it makes sense to be able to operate those machine learning models right on the data that you're storing and you're interacting with and you're manipulating inside the database. So that's the kind of basis and the idea behind SurrealML and SurrealML package. But Maxwell, we're not stopping here, are we? We've got some big plans for SurrealML as we go forward. So without giving too much away at the moment, but what are some of the things we want to build in on the near term with kind of larger models?
Yeah, so we're now looking at the pre-processing, but before I go down that, just to emphasize on the Onyx runtime and the freedom you have, we have so much conviction that the value we add in terms of the SQL, the fact you can compare two versions of the same model in the same query against your data, that's why we didn't need to go down some route of having some weird proprietary format, because we're just like, well, you're going to get so much value just using it on the database anyway. We don't need to lock you in at all.
Let's just bring that up. So just to clarify that, this is that machine learning model function that you uploaded, and then obviously it has a version. So is that what you're talking about, Maxwell? Yeah, the ability to version your models and then actually call separate models, maybe upgrade your queries bit by bit, maybe split test them while you're working out how a model works, how it performs before moving your entire user base to that model.
Yeah. And or you can just compute both of them, right, and see what the differences are. So, and you can retroactively go back. So all that value is added. So that's why, we didn't need to have some sort of weird proprietary thing. We're just like, we can use the well-established way. In terms of our future, we have quite a few things in the pipeline. So we're now looking at like embeddings, sentence embeddings, trying to do them in pure Rust as well. With some collaboration from some other people, because we want to be able to enable some of this in WASM, like pure WASM, and obviously the Onyx runtime is C. We're also trying to see if we can use the pure Rust Onyx, but we're keeping a track of that. We don't want to just adopt it when it's still got some holes in, because that you want to have all the features. And then we are also collaborating with Kings as well. So we started going towards this. We started had the initial meetings, and they do a lot of machine learning and computer vision. So we'll be working with them in their labs with some of the GPUs to try and use machine learning in terms of like things like image search or scrubbing through certain image files or frames and stuff like this. And if anyone's kind of interested in that sort of area, King's is like the biggest bioengineering department outside of the USA, the fourth largest in the world, and it's now becoming the London Center of Bioengineering. So it's going to be quite exciting, like working with some of these experts as well in their labs to try and get like quick feedback on how our software actually directly interacts with some of the hardware like GPUs and the effectiveness of ML searches and that sort of thing.
Definitely, and actually that brings us. I'll bring up Seedship's question first, because that brings us onto the topic of working with non-text or non-structured let's call it JSON data, and actually going beyond that into other file formats, specifically binary and things like that. And that's definitely a part of our roadmap, isn't it? But here's the question from the seed ship. So we'd love to see Llama Index, unstructured, and more LLM tools integrate with Surreal too. So we've got some big plans for this. We want to be able to bring this functionality right inside the database in a similar way to how you do it with SurrealM already, but being able to bring that large language model. And the basis for this is already set up. So we haven't actually documented this in a blog post or on documentation just yet, but already, Maxwell, you can store a model. You can import the model into your database, and let's say that model is 2 gigabytes big. It doesn't sit within your database, does it? It actually sits on a cloud cold storage, so Amazon S3, Google Cloud Storage, Azure File Storage. You can store it locally if you want to as well, if you're just running on a local device. But you can also store that in a distributed cloud kind of safe way, and then have that cache on the local device. So we'll be documenting this more, but it's definitely set up to be able to handle larger models. I guess, Maxwell, let's talk a little bit about our plans around the LLM side and integration with some other of those tools, and what we're working on at the moment, which is on the Candle library.
Yeah, so we could quickly rush LLMs, and we have had a few people that have said, like, what about LLMs? But we have to really understand the bigger picture of this. So all machine learning models are a range of just weights of numbers, and LLMs have to go through a pre-processing stage where they convert those sentences and so on into weights or into numbers so they can be calculated. And really, we could quickly rush this, but we want to do it where you get a lot of freedom. Because there's multiple steps, we want to actually have those steps that are isolated. So we could have a processing layer, and you can pick which processing layer you have. Like, let's say something like BERT, there's all these different types of weights with BERT, which is pre-processing, converting sentences into vector embeddings, and there's different groups that are training it on different contexts, different languages, and you should really have the right to kind of slot the one that you want there. But also, these embeddings don't just directly work with LLMs. LLMs take the forefront because there's a lot of great things going on with them, but you could actually get those vector embeddings and put them into vector search, which is what Emmanuel has implemented. Or you could do some other things with vector search before you pass in the embeddings for searches. So there's like a pipeline of things, and you should really have the freedom of picking what things you want in that pipeline and in what order that you want them in as well. So for instance, if we were going to start searching, we use machine learning to search video files. It's a series of frames, and we may tag those frames when certain things happen using machine learning convolutional neural network. But then you may want vector search, because what you might search for might not be the exact wording of the tag that we've tagged. So you can see like how we need to make sure that it kind of fits in the ecosystem of SurrealDB, because then it's even more powerful than just saying, here's a LLM. You know, that's like great. Everyone's doing that, right? It's we want it to work with the data.
Exactly, and that's important, isn't it? It's about iterating quickly and building in this functionality that developers can build on this, but actually doing it in a way that it makes sense for data, whether that's in an embedded context in Rust or whether that's at scale. And that's part of the challenge, but it's also part of the fun and one thing we're focused on as we go forward, and as we move to this release train, as we've mentioned today, we'll be working more on that. I just want to clarify here. So, Emmanuel, thanks for your answer to Void Walker's question about, are we offering a paid version of the SurrealDB in the future? Absolutely, we'll be launching SurrealDB Cloud this year, in the not too distant future. Let's put it that way. And this will be able to support users who want to use it sporadically, small applications, all the way up to large organizations with large applications with large data needs. So yeah, we'll be talking about a bit more about that in the future. Coming on to Seedship's question here, I think you're talking about Emmanuel's video on the example of FaceNet and using vector embedding search or vector search. so a kind of semantic or understanding search within the database. That's slightly different to what we're talking about. So the model that Emmanuel used in that video is actually running in Python. It's just pushing data into the database and then querying that database, or the data in the database in that way. That's slightly different, albeit this is where it's quite hard to define that line, because the ML functionality, in terms of the files that you build and you integrate into SerilDB and then become functions, is related to, but actually different to, the vector search, the vector embedding, the vector functionality that Emmanuel has been working on around the indexing. So in that case, the model wasn't in the database itself. It could be actually. That would be quite an interesting thing to try, actually, to improve Emmanuel's demo, so that the inference and the execution is actually happening inside the database rather than inside Python. But yeah, but SerilML models that you upload and large language models in the future will be able to be run or stored locally in a cloud and be brought down and cached. So you'll be able to run these at scale with multiple inference nodes at the edge. So definitely got plans for that. Awesome. So there you go. Emmanuel said at the very end here, ML plus IX. So ML is our SerilML, obviously, and IX, the Seril IX, is the indexing functionality. We've now got normal traditional indexes and unique indexes with that. Full text search indexing, which has had a lot of improvements and a couple of bug fixes, but great performance improvements and feature improvements in this version as well. And then obviously now the vector embedding, which again, it's still in an early stage as we work on some of the performance aspects of that and add in more of the functionality, but really optimistic in terms of some of the results we're seeing with that, and especially the fact that indexing sits right next to your data. That's really important. You can run your machine learning model function inside the database. You can store the output data in terms of vectors inside the database. You can search on that. And based on that search, you could then run another machine learning model. And that is where it becomes really powerful. You can combine all of these things together. And that's where it becomes fun. So yeah, absolutely. ML plus IX equals a smiley face. Absolutely.
I just go one step further as well. So if we talk about, like, let's say the BERT model kind of works out the nature of the word in relation to the context of the sentence, because it's been trained on a lot of things. So you could then actually create embeddings based on the ML model and then transfer that over to your index searching as well to make your index searching even smarter. But obviously there's a trade-off on computation, right? You'll never get everything for free, but that's actually a very powerful combination as well.
It is. And I think that's important, right? Instead of having to have multiple disparate systems that all do separate parts of that, you could effectively bring that machine learning model into an event. And when a record is changed, you could update an index with the vector representation of that data rather than the data itself. And that's where it becomes really important. Chaining these things together. Seril chain. Hey, maybe something in the future.
We might get confused as a cryptocurrency. We're coded in Rust, and then it's like Seril chain. Like,
there you go, Seril coin. We'll have that as well. So I think that brings us on to another point, which is performance improvements in this version. And we've got a question earlier, Maxwell, while you're here, which is, I'll bring it up here. Can't wait for the Python live queries. So we haven't yet, but something that Maxwell worked on last year, we've been keeping it up to date alongside the current Python library, is a native Python driver built on top of our Rust SDK. So this benefits from all of the functionality in the Rust SDK, from the binary protocol, from the querying on the client side rather than the server, and then pushing that parsed query over the network itself. So really, really exciting stuff. It's released, you can try it, but it's only released on a separate repository, not repository, what's it called? It's a Python package. So it's released at the moment, but we'll be pushing that into the main release this month, and then alongside live queries, you'll be able to build on top of what we built into the SerilDB Rust crate and the Rust driver. So really exciting stuff. Along with that, we've been working on some of the performance improvements inside the database itself. in addition to index functionality improvements or performance improvements and improvements around the parser, we've got some really cool. So WebSocket performance improvements have now been implemented so that you can now have many concurrent messages as you want. You can actually control that with an environment variable as well. We'll be documenting that over the next couple of weeks. And then as we look forward, much better performance around creating records and checking that those records exist. More caching. There is no caching at the moment in the database, so there's lots of room for improvement there. But I think it's really cool. So Maxwell, jump in a little bit and talk to us about why this Python driver is going to be great. You'll be able to use it's non-async. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we use Python bindings, and we try and keep those Python bindings very thin. So then that means that then anything that we do that's cool in Rust in the client kind of just gets translated over to the Python one. And then we also support both. So we support async Python if you want to do that and pass in your own event loop, or we support blocking, which means we still use a async IO event loop, but we hide it all from you in a singleton and we block on it. So you're just directly calling it and you don't have to think about it. Because we like to support both sides, because Python's like used for a whole different range of things. I actually reach for Python when I would just want sequential computation, but I don't want to be so opinionated that I want to force everyone to use it my way, right? But so we have to be empathetic with both types of developers in that sense. But yeah, it's very powerful. And I mean, I can't say that we exactly know the roadmap in the future, but we also use the same approach for the SealML Python client. So we could see some good combinations of those later on, depending on how those products develop. But they both use the PyO3 bindings, and they both use Rust under the hood, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's going to be great when we've moved that client to the Rust-based native SDK. Going back to performance, we've got another amazing feature or improvement going into 1.2.0. So let's talk a little bit about what's coming in the next release. I won't give too much away because this will be in beta over the next month, and then we'll talk about it more in a month's time. But we've got improvements to vector functionality, so brute force vector search, and additional improvements beyond that. We've got improvement to schema. So there are lots of areas in the database where schema and the schema functionality can be improved, specifically around relations and how you define those and how those operate. Obviously, more performance improvements. We've got more caching. We've got more implementations and simplifications where we can, so that we're reducing the number of writes and reads that any query does. And one of the big things, really big pull request that's emerging today, is a absolutely complete rewrite of the SealDB or SealQL parser. So we're moving forward from the initial parser that was implemented before we even launched in open source over a year and a half ago, and we're now this is effectively a handwritten parser with much better optimization and much better performance than the current parser. So really exciting stuff. That will be coming as an experimental feature, so you'll be able to enable that by choice in builds. It won't be released until version 2.0, which will be in the future. But that will give you much better performance on your queries, which we're really excited about. So along with that, got some great things coming up in this next month as well. But if you, I think 1.1.0 is being built right now. It's going to be released, if not already, it will be released very soon, imminently. And if you want to try out some of the features, some of the things in the blog posts, and we'll be releasing more blog posts over the course of this week describing some of the additional things you can do with this feature, this new release. And jump into it, download it as soon as it's available. The docs will be updating as well with the new functionality and the new release. So we're really excited with everything that's been going on this last month, and we're really excited to jump into this regular release cycle as we go forward now. so that you, users, developers, the community can benefit, can build upon, and can understand that CeruleDB is stable and able to be built on in a way that doesn't make it difficult for you as an application developer. So yeah, it's really exciting, really exciting. Maxwell, anything I've missed?
Not I can think of. I think we covered quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot of features, right? It's
there's a lot of features, absolutely. I mean, and we'll be jumping on to Ask Me Anything again on Discord. I think it might be next week or 2 weeks' time. We'll be announcing that on our social medias. But if you've got any questions for then, or if they can't wait, then put them on Discord, put them on GitHub. Otherwise, feel free to ask me on that stream in Discord in a couple of weeks' time. But other than that, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at a stream in the future. Thanks. Take care.